We talk about Yosef and his brothers, of course. And I want to mention one thing. Yesterday, we talked about sort of narrative switches in the story. I wanted to talk one thing about what happens here, which I think is very important before we get to the second aliyah, which is the revelation of Yosef, revealing that he is the brother of these men who do not know that up to this time that he is their brother. And part of the speech of Yehuda, talked about yesterday, is what Yehuda does is he shifts the focus. He changes the narrative. Yosef, you're not the only one who is a victim here. Now, he doesn't know he's speaking to Yosef. He thinks he's speaking to the viceroy of Egypt, who sees himself as a victim because he was taken advantage of. His cup was stolen. But what Yehuda does there in the larger story is, as to the listener, is Yosef is not the only victim in the story. Yes, Yosef is the person who's the greatest victim in the story. Yosef is the one who's sold into slavery. Yosef is the one who's in the pit. Yosef is the one whose brothers don't hear his cries. But there are two other victims in the story. One is Yaakov, right? Yaakov is a real victim of the story. Yaakov, and Yosef may not know this. Yaakov basically lives a life of depression from the moment that his son disappears. And the rabbis note this in the Midrash. They talk about 22 years or so that Yaakov doesn't get any revelation. He doesn't get any prophecy. He doesn't get any nivuah. He doesn't believe at first when the brothers come and later on in this parsha and say, our brother Yosef is alive. And there's a story made up by the Midrash that his granddaughter starts playing music to him and revelation comes back and he finally recognizes, but he's without revelation. He's depressed. He only sees a terrible future. And the other person who's a terrible victim, and Yehuda changes this for Yosef, is with Binyamin. Binyamin is a victim. Binyamin, and we talked about this yesterday, is not allowed to live. His father won't let him leave the house. His father won't let him enter into a lifestyle. And so Yehuda changes the narrative completely. And that's part of what finally allows Yosef to reveal himself in the second aliyah of Parshat Vayigash. And that's the beginning of chapter 45. Yosef could no longer control himself before of all the people who were gathered around him. Vayikra, and he called out, Otziu kol ishmei alai. And he said, everybody needs to leave the room. Everyone withdraw from me. So there was no one else there when Yosef made himself known to his brothers. And then he cries out. And it says, Vayishma'u Mitzrayim Vayishma Beit Paro. His sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear, and the news reached Pharaoh's palace. And there's something fascinating there. The Torah is telling us, right? What does Joseph do? He kicks everybody out. And the first thing we're told, even before he officially says to his brother, I am Yosef, which comes in verse 3, verse 2 is already that everybody hears it anyway. Everybody hears the truth of what he says. It goes out. Yosef is a story very much of concealment, of hiding his identity, of not telling everybody who he is or what he is hiding. The idea of him being this Hebrew, this foreigner. We talked in the past about Paro. Paro accepts Yosef, even though he's a Jew boy, even though he's a migrant, even though he's from a different tribe, a different people, a lesser people, as we saw when the brothers are sitting at another table. Paro then hides him. He gives him new clothing. He gives him an Egyptian wife. He gives him an Egyptian name. People don't know who that person is. It's hidden. The brothers have no idea that this is a migrant, that person that they're talking to, that rose up from slavery, and he's from a different society. He didn't grow up here. And so Yosef is a life for the last 20 or so years of suppression, of secrecy, of hiding his identity, of not letting anybody know who he was. We talked about it as well with the name Menashe. I've forgotten the pain of my father's house, right? If he's saying I forgot it, that means obviously he remembers it, but he's suppressing it. He doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to discuss it. He doesn't want to air it in public. He's put it behind him. He's in a place of success. He's not up and down anymore. He's up. He's in a great place. And so he hides it. But what happens is secrets can't stay around forever. You can't keep something secretive forever. Eventually, everything gets out. And when you finally break that secret, it's like the bubble bursts. And Erica Brown wrote about this. I read it a few years ago. I don't remember, sort of all the details of what it says. But basically, sort of secrets preserve life, but they can distort relationships, right? So you're keeping something secret to not tell somebody so that it doesn't cause a problem, and maybe it helps them. But you need to give up control of that secret to preserve life. Yosef here, when he finally gives up control of his secret, when he says he's no longer um, when he says he's no longer just an Egyptian viceroy, but he's the brothers, it's the redemptive moment. It's a redemptive moment for him. It's a redemptive moment for the brothers. The brothers don't accept it as a redemptive moment. They are scared. They are terrified. So the secret is silent, but when it is broken, it's like the dam breaks. It's a total loss of control. And you know, I think about sort of, going back to political people. Think of Madeleine Albright. Did she know that she was Jewish or not know she was Jewish? And right, you can't keep that secret for forever. You can't hold those things back. Secrets eventually get out, and oftentimes when they get out, they are extremely loud, and they have extremely significant um, I don't know, impact is the right word, but they're loud. They get to everybody, right? So again, here, Yosef tries not to tell anybody else. I don't want to reveal myself to anybody else. I want to reveal myself to my brothers. But it is such a shock that even before he says it, again, think of the order of the verses, what I'm really sort of talking about here, right? In verse 1, he could not control himself any longer. He kicks everybody else. Verse 2, everybody hears his loud crying. The people were kicked out of the room. Maybe they had thin walls. The people were kicked out of the room. Hear what he says. It gets all the way to the house of Paro. And we're told that even before, in verse 3, Vayomer Yosef Elechav, Ani Yosef, and he says to his brothers, I am Joseph. Ha'od avi chai. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him because they were dumbfounded. They were shocked. They were so surprised at what had happened, you know, at this revelation. They weren't ready for it. But here, when you reveal the secret, then finally this changes everything. And so you have people that try to do that. They try to hide their secrets. And sometimes there are good reasons to hide a secret. And, secrets are secrets, and they're things that you don't want to tell other people. And sometimes it's better, and they're interesting halachic questions. Should you tell something about somebody else who has wronged them? Is it going to be to their benefit or not to be to their benefit? There are lots of intriguing actual, halachic question that comes out of here. And secrets are important, but when you open that dam, word spreads everywhere. And you have to know that secrets can't last forever. Yosef couldn't hide his identity forever. Eventually, it was going to come out. And when it comes out, it's not something that he can hold. You can hold back. You think of another story in the Torah, which has a lot of similarities to the Yosef story. I shouldn't say it's in the Torah, it's in the Tanakh much later, which is, of course, the story of Megillat Esther, which has a lot of similarities. And Mordechai is drawn up, as it were, in a sense, like Yosef, right? But it's really a combination of Mordechai and Esther. She's Esther. Her real Jewish name is Hadassah, but she's called Esther. She's a secret. She's hidden away. She hides her identity. And then finally, she is pushed to go to the Paro of her time, to go to Achashverosh and reveal herself to save her people. Yosef here has to reveal himself to his own people. There, Esther has to confront the Paro of her time. She has to confront Achashverosh to save her people. But Mordechai and Esther, right? Mordechai becomes, eventually, he has new clothing put on him. He becomes the second in command. He's given the keys to the palace in the same way that Yosef is. He is in control. He's in the diaspora. There are a lot of similarities between those stories. And one of the similarities, again, is this idea of the secrecy. And ultimately, secrecy is not going to save the Jewish people. Whether it's secrecy of your identity to your own siblings, to your family, to the Jewish people, or whether it's secrecy to the country in which you live in, to the president, to the prime minister, to the king, whatever it is. Esther cannot save the Jewish people if she remains Esther. She has to be Hadassah. Now her name remains as Esther because that's sort of who she is in the story. But the idea here of secrets and the idea here of revealing yourself is a very significant, sort of notion. I want to go back to something we talked about yesterday after our official recording with me and Rav Shmuel, which is then in the next verses where then Yosef says, "Come close to me, Geshana Elai, come, approach." And it says Vayigashu, and the brothers approach him. This is the second time where we have this word Vayigash. First, Yehuda approaches Yosef, and now Yosef is telling the brothers to come close to him. And it goes back to what we were talking about in Rav Shmuel yesterday, that this goes back all the way to Yaakov, when Yaakov is hidden as his brother Esav. Yaakov is hidden. Yaakov is claiming he's Esav. Yaakov is put on the furs of Esav. And right, Yitzchak says to Yaakov, Geshana, come close to me and let me feel your arm. And it says, Vayigash Yaakov el Aviv, Yaakov comes close. So it's a closing of that circle, that sort of that deception, that hiddenness. Who are you? Yaakov claims that he is Esav, and only now, to a certain extent, when Yosef reveals the truth of who he is, does that deception finally close. Does that secrecy finally close, and everything can change. And this aliyah continues with key verses. We talked about the life of Yosef, the up and down life, down to Egypt, up to the top of Potiphar's house, down back in prison, back up again, right? His life, he's born on the bottom, up and down and up and down. But the full idea of who Yosef is and his development is the very next verse in the next aliyah, when he says to his brothers, don't be upset. Don't beat yourself up that you sold me into slavery, because this was all part of God's plan. It was to save the life of God that sent me ahead of you. And that is the key to the life of Yosef. And I think we talked about in the last days, but to repeat it again, Yosef's story is a story of a young, arrogant person, a very talented, arrogant person. His father recognizes the great talent that he has. His father makes him the Ketonet Pasim and gives him and pushes his arrogance perhaps to a higher level. Yosef is saying things that he shouldn't say. Geder lechochma shtika. There's certain things you shouldn't say. Yosef doesn't have that. Yosef is arrogant. He's very talented. He's got greater dreams and greater plans. There's a fine line between lunacy and vision. Oftentimes there's a mixture of both, right? You think, let's say in our generation, somebody like Elon Musk, is he a lunatic? Is he a visionary? He's probably both. Yosef has, in a sense, that he has these dreams, but he also, he's saying things that he shouldn't. The whole world is going to be bowing down to me. I'm in charge. I'm the center of the universe. But this is the verse where he says, now that he is the center of the universe, he recognizes it has nothing to do with him. This is all God's plan. This has nothing to do with me. I am just a puppet. I am Pinocchio. I am, Howdy Doody. I'm just a puppet. God is the puppeteer. So now when the world revolves around him, that's the development of Yosef. I am in charge, but it's not because of my talents. It's not because of my abilities. It's not because of anything that I have done, but it's all part of God's larger plan. And that bitul is something that's very, very important. That sense of, and that's the full maturity of Yosef. It's not just that he reveals himself to his brothers, the same way that Yehuda went and finally convinced Yaakov to send Binyamin by saying, Ner da, we will all go down together. You don't want to send your son into history. You want to hide him in the womb. You don't want him to Yerei, to go down. Ner da, we'll go down. We're all together. What Yosef is saying, in a sense, to his brothers here is, yes, I had this dream where you were bowing down to me, where mom and dad were bowing down to me, where the whole world was bowing down to me. But now I recognize that in the dream, you're not bowing down to me. I'm also just a puppet. I might be who everybody's bowing down, but it has nothing to do with me. And that's Yosef's full recognition. Now that he is a person of great importance and great significance, he can finally, reveal what he is, which is a person and just a puppet and just a person of just somebody in part of the larger divine plan. He might be a person of great importance. He might have the ability to change the world for better and for worse, but it's not about him. And this is, sort of as it were, the great moment in the life of Yosef, in my opinion, and shows his full growth as an individual. He changes completely who he was. It's not about me, it's about God. And that's why, right afterwards, then in the third aliyah, right, he's saying to them, go and quickly get that. We need to take care of this right away. We need to save you. Don't dawdle. Hurry up. Bring them down here, because this is a divine plan and we can't wait any longer. And maybe when he says that, and again, this is in the third aliyah, the Maharu, he says, go hurry up and get dad and bring him down here. And this is where our family is going to survive. There may be a little bit of guilt. He finally recognizes that the brothers have done tshuva, that they fully regret what they did to him, that they're worthy of having him save them, that they're worthy of being part of a family that's going to be together. But he put them a little bit through hell over the last year, 6 months, however long it is, while right, he's torturing them. Don't come down unless you have your younger son. You guys are a bunch of thieves. He may feel a little sense of guilt that it took so long, but ultimately, this is the maturation of Yosef, the complete change of who he is. And again, the idea that secrets do not stay. And when your secret is revealed, it spreads everywhere. And that's what happens here with Yosef. He might kick the people out, but even before he says it to them, everybody knows who he is right away. And that's the ordering of these 45 verses 1, 2, and 3.